and then take the results and use them wherever you like. This is an unprecedented user experience revolution. Now, I also should mention ChatGPT, even though most of you, I'm sure, have tried it out. What I've heard is that the people in an organization who are the least likely to have actually tried these tools out, use them with their own hands, are leadership. So the more senior you get, the less likely you are to have actually used this stuff. That should worry all of us if it's going to have labor and economic impact. So what I found was a fun factoid. When a group of CEOs was surveyed and asked, what is your most frequent use case, personally, for ChatGPT, those who had used it said, we use it for things like writing a birthday poem or a retirement poem. So, like, write a funny retirement poem for your CEO in the style of Dr. Seuss, and you get something like, you've been the big cheese, the head of the pack, now it's your time to kick back and slack. Another fun thing that OpenAI found was that people, and this tells you a little about the human condition, is that people would use this system to expand on bullet points and turn these into emails. So write an email with these bullet points and the system expands them, and then what OpenAI found was that another very common use case was, in fact, to summarize emails back into bullet points. So people were starting with bullet points, ending up with emails, taking the emails, ending up with bullet points, right? That's just the human condition for you right there. But the point is that the user interface, CEOs and other leaders, is as simple as sending a text message, so really you have no excuse not to use this. The trouble is, though, that when you use it, what you use it for is to look at it once quickly, to try it out. And when you try it out, you might be very impressed by what you see there, and you'll be very impressed by demos in spaces like this one. What you really need to do is keep pushing until you hit your zone of disappointment. Because with any technology, it's not perfect. Keep pushing until it starts failing and until it starts making mistakes, and there you will begin to learn the right things from it. What we'll see very quickly is that there are two broad uses for these technology. One is personal productivity tools. And that is fundamentally a human-in-the-loop model, where you yourself take responsibility for your own output. That's like you working, you bought your own laptop, you're responsible for your output. You're not going to blame whatever happens next on the laptop in that my dog ate my homework kind of sense. You are going to work with that piece of technology to build yourself up. And of course, just as with laptops, those who can afford the technology will end up becoming relatively more productive than those who can't afford things like subscription costs and hardware costs. There is the other piece, though, and that is the enterprise automation piece. That one is a bit trickier, and let me show you why. Here I've asked ChatGPT to write the Fortran code for generating the Fibonacci sequence, and what we see is something that looks like code right there. Now it turns out that I have no understanding of Fortran. So when I look at this, I don't know, maybe it looks plausible. I could just pick it up, I could put it into the software, the code repository of my company, and I could end up pushing this to production and making a horrible mess without ever knowing if it worked, right? It's very mysterious. If you don't actually understand this code, how do you know if it's any good? When we talk about enterprise automation, we're talking about taking the human out of the loop often. And that means we now have to start thinking about trust and what it means to trust a software system and what it means to test a software system. Unfortunately, we are getting so far ahead of ourselves with all these generative technologies because we do not have good procedures and plans for testing them. A few things that we do know. One is that this will be, in some strange way, the rise of the statistician again. I, as a recovering statistician, find that to be quite funny because that's a profession that definitely dipped in popularity, might be coming back up. Another thing that we know about context matters. Just because it works in one situation doesn't mean that it will keep working in another situation. What we also know is that because the inputs and the data to these systems might shift over time, how well it works might also change over time. So when you start to automate at scale without a human in the loop with these types of systems, you need to stay on top of whether they are still performing what you need them to perform, and you need to keep testing, and you need to keep checking, you need to keep monitoring, you need to keep maintaining. And that's a kind of truth that you don't hear spelled out very often. Very context dependent, very situation dependent. And again, think of it like this. You know I don't speak Portuguese. If I were to make that retirement poem for a CEO in Portuguese, and I just take whatever I get and I pass it along to my most important and valued Portuguese-speaking CEO friend, I might deeply embarrass myself. Having the expertise to check that this works is really important. And there's going to be a huge difference between me, non-speaker of Portuguese, and somebody who is fluent. That skill that allows you to check the system is a very important one. And how do you get that skill? You get that skill by building up expertise at the task, by speaking Fortran in the first place, or Portuguese, by understanding how to do it yourself. And if we start to talk about automating away all the experts who have these skills, who's going to do the testing and the checking? How will we know whether any of it works? This is also why we keep hearing statistics like, if you have a developer who's really, really good at writing code, then when they use these tools, it makes them better. But at the same time, when you have someone who isn't good at it, their performance goes way down, productivity goes way down. Likewise, if you have a very good writer, a good writer might be able to use these tools to make themselves better. A bad writer will churn out a lot of mediocre stuff. Yes, maybe it's a lot, but will it be any good? Who's to say? Automation is accelerating. So what stays 100% human in an automation accelerating world? I would bring it all back to all the bits that are the thinking components. So what are the bits that this doesn't automate? Decision making, of course. The why in the first place. Why are we doing any of it? What is worth doing? These systems won't make those judgments for us. Design. The core design piece, we're keeping that. But we won't be held back, perhaps, by as much technical limitation as before. Our tools will get better. So the thinking piece will rise to the surface, and the toil and the fiddling with nasty tools, that'll go away. Creativity. What can we do with all this? When we look today, when we talk about jobs and jobs going away, we are imagining that economic activity is static, and that all of our concerns today are the only concerns that we're going to have. But imagine a world in which automation accelerates, where there's more going on, more people having their creativity unlocked because they don't have to fiddle with annoying tools. Well, as you have more going on, you're building more things, you're inventing more things, there will be more challenges and opportunities. Everything will happen at a faster pace. I think that in order to react to all that, we might need more labor, not less, though time will have to tell there. Communication, interpersonal skills, spending time with one another, that is definitely going to be on the rise. And maybe that's the best of what we're for in the first place. Being with other people and connected to a community. Problem solving, these are tools. These are like paintbrushes for artists, but what's worth doing in the first place? How do you take all the components available to you and put them together into a solution? That's going to be a necessary skill no matter what. And maybe that is what an engineer is. I consider myself an engineer and scientist. And when I think about what makes me an engineer, it's that whatever problem you throw at me, I can look at all the available tools I have to solve it, and I can put them together in an interesting way to come up with that solution. This is just more tools, so we can solve more interesting problems. But going from tool to problem solved, that fundamental skill, there's no reason why that should go away. Social and interpersonal, as I mentioned, of course are going to be a big part of the future. But now the big three. Adaptability in a world that's rapidly changing, that is a skill, and that's a skill that we need to nurture in ourselves and our kids. And then collaboration and trust. Things are getting bigger than just one person. I don't know how your educational program was, but mine, particularly in the mathematical disciplines, taught me that in order to use a solution, or in order to help myself to a theorem in mathematics, I had to develop it from first principles myself. I had to get there from the axioms. I could only use what I could build myself with my own hands, with my own thoughts. That style is going to have to go extinct. It's like the difference between building your own mud hut and building a skyscraper. The skyscraper is not a one-person job. And no single person is going to know every component of putting the skyscraper up. We're going to have to learn how to work in teams, and we're going to have to figure out what trust means when you can't check everything. How are we going to join both human systems and AI systems together when the boundaries are opaque? These are the questions that we don't have good answers to. We need more people studying these topics, both on the technical data side and on the human side. What is trust and collaboration going to look like in the future? Because this is our list. This is not going away. It will stay 100% human, no matter how interesting the tools get. At the end of the day, in our brighter future, I do believe that there will be so much for all of us to do. There will be diseases to cure, there will be climate change to solve, there will be inventions to make, there will be a whole future to build. And we will need the best of us throughout all of this. We are not going out of style. These skills will always be there. And I'm glad that the toil in between might go down a notch. Thank you very much.